Welcome to NEXTGames, The Journey of CyberLogic, Episode 26. Now, I've been taking a break from this series, and it's been 11 months since our last episode, but I still have the next 5 episodes recorded, and I'm excited to put them together and continue the series. Now, in our last 25 episodes, you have watched as we have gone from a brand new level 1 character to a level 96 ninja with a Kokoku and Octave Club. We have taken on both Dynamis and Ground Gods, and will now turn our attention to Abyssea. Now, before starting that, I wanted to show an example of just how much an endgame weapon like the Kokoku makes at this stage in the game. Now, to show this difference, I went back to Corinne, who was taking us nearly 20 minutes to take out in episode 24 with this same gear and level, just minus the Kokoku. Here you are seeing me take on Corinne for the first time after getting and upgrading it in our last episode. My kills are now taking less than 3 minutes, not even allowing his spawned ads to appear. Now, Abyssea bosses were going to be quite a challenge to take on solo previously, but we should now have the damage needed to make it manageable. Unfortunately, Corinne's Osode didn't drop for me on this particular kill, but after 2 more sets of gods, I was able to get my last sky item to drop and head to our next event, Abyssea. Now, Abyssea has a wealth of gear available to us for a sub-level 99 player, which is where we plan to stay with this character for the foreseeable future. So let's delve into the world of Abyssea and what this event has to offer. Now, it offers 9 huge zones that are located in parallel versions of the zones that you're already familiar with across Vana'diel. Now, in these zones, there are lots of fodder mobs to get experience off of at this level, as well as the highest number of notorious monsters to fight in any zone we have seen to date. Now, the zone we're about to start in, for instance, has nearly 30 of them. Now, bosses in Abyssea are subject to 3 different staggers that each have a dramatic effect on the fight. Yellow staggers will greatly increase the chance of getting Empyrean armor upgrades, which we'll be working on soon. Yellow staggers are triggered by using specific spells on the enemy that coincide with the element of the day that the enemy was spawned on. Now, blue triggers are achieved by using a specific weapon skill from the pool of available weapon skills for the time frame in which the mob was spawned. Now, 6 AM to 2 PM, you use piercing weapon skills. From 2 PM to 10 PM, slashing. And from 10 PM to 6 PM, you use blunt. Now, blue triggers will greatly increase the chances of the enemies dropping one of its rare items. Now, lastly, there is a red stagger, which is triggered by using one of 13 elemental weapon skills spread across 9 weapons. Now, red staggers will guarantee that you get the Atma and key item from the enemy that you're defeating. Now, Atma grants you stat bonuses while in Abyssea when they are active. Now, there's obviously a lot more to this event, and one can spend many hours on its quest and fighting its notorious monsters. I will first be focusing on the main quest for each of the 9 Abyssea zones, as well as the specific armor that I need on Ninja in this part of the series. But I will expand upon Abyssea at a later time in the series for those that have further interest here. Now, entry to Abyssea is done through cavernous maws that are scattered throughout Vana'diel. Now, the first we will be entering is the Konschtat Highlands and grants us access to Abyssea-Konschtat. Now, clicking on it starts the main quest for the zone called To Paste a Piece. Now, in this quest, you will defeat notorious monsters in tiers until you work your way to the main Pieced NM, Kukulkan. Now, you will enter here at Conflux number 1, and you will need to walk to your first NM located here. Now, on your way to this spot, you will want to be sure to stop by Conflux 2, 4, and 5 to unlock them and make travel inside this zone easier in the future. You can travel between confluxes that you've unlocked within any zone. Now, once you get to this area and see the buggards, it's time to start killing them until you get the giant buggard tusk item to drop, the first pop item that we need. You can use it here to spawn Alkonost, our first NM. Now, what we need from him is for him to give us the key item of Tattered Hippoglyph Wing when he dies. However, there is only a small chance of this happening. Now, in order to increase that chance to 100%, we need to make sure that we get our red stagger in. Now, being able to do this on Ninja is not guaranteed, as we can only do a portion of the required weapon skills. So you will need to try those that you do have available to you in hopes that they will trigger it. Keep in mind that you can't stagger during castings or the use of TP abilities, so time your uses of those weapon skills carefully. Now if you don't get that key item to drop on your first kill, as what happens to me here on my first kill, you will simply need to farm another tusk from the buggard that are surrounding this NM, and then go ahead and spawn him again. Now drop rates of the key items without staggering, I would say are about the 25% range. So usually about 1 in 4 times you will at least get the key item, even if you do not stagger them. Now all of the NMs you see in Abyssea are also going to drop weapons and armor as well, so make sure you check online in regards to what they have the capability of dropping, and make sure that you go ahead and continue to fight them until you get those drops if it's something that you need. Remember that blue stagger will make your drop rate on those weapons and armor go up substantially. Now our next NM to defeat is Abyssea. Now in order to spawn this NM, we need to kill Ahriman in this area until we get a clouded lens pop to drop. Now we can then use it to spawn Abyssea right here. Now Abyssea is special in that she can't be hit by normal attacks. Instead, only ranged attacks and magic can damage her. Now due to this, trust selection is very important as they will be getting in the majority of your damage on this fight, if not all of it. I go with several rangers and mages to get the job done as fast as possible. Now occasionally, the boss will spawn some adds that can be meleeed, and also they can be staggered, and it counts against the stagger on the main NM, so keep that in mind if you are in any way needing to stagger this one. Now I choose not to melee them in this example, as doing so causes them to die quite quickly and takes away all of my damage from the boss that your ranged backline is doing. You also want to be on the ready for Eagle Eye Shot, as it will be used several times during the fight by all 4 enemies at the exact same time, which will do over 1000 damage to you in total at this present level and gearing. Now I was fortunate and was able to get the key item to drop on my first kill, but if you're struggling to get it on this one, make sure you try and red stagger those adds. Now speaking of a red stagger, let's use a few minutes to go into more detail on what our options are while we finish off this NM. Now, there are 13 total weapon skills that can trigger a red stagger, and Ninja with a warrior sub-job can do all of them, as long as you have the skill and the weapons. Now for 5 of these weapons, it's quite easy for Ninja. Those include dagger, sword, katana, great katana, and club. Now all of these can easily be done with Ninja with the warrior sub-job, and every one of these weapon types has several available options to Ninja to utilize. Now this takes care of 8 of the weapon skills and 5 of the weapon options. For the other 4 weapons and 5 weapon skills, we need to use the few weapons available to us on Ninja to get them done. Now those 4 remaining weapons are Staff, Greatsword, Scythe, and Polearm. Now while Staff does have a few options for Ninja, the main few options for these weapons come from 1 damage weapon options that come from seasonal events or ambuscade. Now 1 damage weapons work very well to red staggers. They allow you to do the lowest amount of damage possible to the monster, buying you time to try as many stagger options as possible before the NM dies. Now red staggers aren't as critical at tier 1 here, as you can easily farm another pop item. But as soon as you go deeper into the tiers, a failed key item drop will cause you to start back over at tier 1, making things like red stagger ever so important as the tier of the NM increases. That's going to be it for Abyssea. Let's now move on to the 3rd and final tier 1 NM in this set, Keri Tyrannos. Keri Tyrannos is located west of you on the map from here. In order to spawn him, you need to get the Armored Dragonhorn pop item to drop from the surrounding Wivri. Now I find this item drops a little less frequently than the other 2, but still I would say has about a 10% drop rate. Now once you get the horn, you will want to spawn Kera at the question marks at this location. Be sure to kill any nearby Wivri before spawning him so that they don't interrupt your fight. Now this fight isn't overly challenging unless the AoE Paralyze ability is used. The AoE ability can do considerable amount of damage to both you and your trust, and the Paralyze is extremely potent and can often leave you and your trust vulnerable and unable to successfully cast or do anything for well over a minute. So you don't want to take your time on this one too much so that hopefully that ability doesn't go off on you. Now you also want to keep in mind that this NM uses abilities back to back, so when you're trying to get the stagger of red off, or blue and yellow, as you see me doing here, you want to be sure to wait until after the second ability finishes going off before attempting it. Now this NM shows a good example of me rotating through my elemental weapon skills to get that red stagger. Now I start with Blade E with no success, and then move on to Dagger with both Cyclone and Energy Drain. Now since those didn't trigger it, I then move on to Sword with Red Lotus Blade and Seraph Blade. This is then followed by Club attempting Seraph Strike, causing the red stagger. Now I would normally follow that up, if I hadn't staggered, with Great Katana using Tachi Jinpu and Tachi Koki, and its staff is also easily attainable for ninja, so if you have the skill, you can also finish your rotation off with Earth Crusher and Sunburst. Now Freeze Bite, Shadow of Death, and Raiden Thrust all need to have the previously mentioned event or ambuscade 1 damage weapons that the majority of players will not have at this point in their playthrough, so just go ahead and ignore those. So since we got the red stagger, we know our key item is going to drop as long as we don't already have it, which means after this kill, we will have all 3 key items needed to spawn the second tier NM that we need to defeat in order to complete this zone's main quest. Now that NM is called Kukulkan and can be spawned by clicking on the question marks at this location just northeast of your last NM. Now we have just spawned Kukulkan, and the first thing you will notice is that we are using a trust tank, which I normally do not do. This is critical on this NM, and in hindsight I should have actually summoned 2 trust tanks. Now the reason for this is the NM's main abilities of Grim Glower and Oppressive Gaze. He will use these very frequently, and once he does, his eyes will start to glow blue for a few minutes. Now when he's in this state, anyone facing him will be inflicted with both terror and zombie, making it impossible for them to move or be cured, easily ending the fight for the party in most situations. So the trick is to have 2 tanks on opposite sides of the NM. When we do this and keep the hate similar between the 2 tanks, the NM will bounce back and forth, allowing each to both be cured and continue to get their damage in. In addition to this nasty ability, he has access to Aqua Forti, which is an AoE poison that will knock you back and wipe shadows, and that poison can get quite potent. Calcifying Mist, which is an AoE, petrification, and will wipe shadows ability. Delta Thrust, which will inflict Plague and wipe 3 of your shadows. Tropifying Charge, which is an AoE paralyze, and Regurgitation, which is a knockback and bind ability. So your trust are going to be quite busy keeping all of these nasty effects off of you. Now, Yoran Oran is very useful in doing so I suggest you use him along with Koromoru and Joaquin. I also suggest you have 2 tank trusts that can both heal, and you should have exactly what you need to take this one on reliably at this level. Now you will notice that after about halfway through this fight, my trust tank dies due to a combination of a nasty attack followed by high poison damage. This is the reason why I suggest using 2 tanks, so that you can hopefully spread out in a triangle formation around him, so that if one of the tanks happens to die, you can continue to bounce hate between at least you and the remaining tank and keep the fight going. Now my run is dramatically slowed down by many minutes due to the tank dying, as when this happens, you are really only left with 2 choices. Since facing him for more than a second at any time with his blue eyes up will basically instantly kill you, the 2 options you are left with is to first just go ahead and turn your back and wait for it to wear off, as you see me doing here, or you can go ahead and actually just turn for a brief second, just enough to get a round of melee attacks in, and then turn right back around again. If done quickly enough, you will only become terrorized as you turn your back again, which allows it to wear off a second later and for you to repeat this process without being terrorized in place. Now when you have enough TP for a weapon skill, you can turn, hit your weapon skill macro while turning back around again and accomplish the same thing while still getting that weapon skill in. Doing this can speed up your fight dramatically, but saying turn for just a split second too long during any of these turns will make you terrorized in the wrong position facing him and almost always end your run. So it's up to you on if you want to play it safe or go for speed. Now while we finish up the fight, a few more notes on Abyssea. As you saw me do at the beginning of the video, you can teleport directly to the entrance mods for any of the Abyssea zones from Horst in Port Juno. Now the currency you use to enter Abyssea and stay inside are the Traverser Stones that we started accruing many episodes ago when we first talked to Akeem in Port Juno. Now you should have more than enough by this stage of those stones to be in Abyssea as much as you wish. Just remember that each stone is only worth a certain amount of time, so keep your eye on the time left in the zone and make sure you warp out and get more stones for more time when needed. You can always use the heal command or rest when you're in the zone to give you an idea of how much time you have left. Keeping track of how much time you have left is especially true when fighting the harder tier NMs, as you definitely don't want to time out of the zone when you're fighting one. You also will be locked out of the zone for an hour if you run out of time and get kicked out, so make sure you keep this in mind. Now when you first enter the zone, you need to speak with the Conflux Surveyor to exchange your stones for time. You can also speak with the Curer Prospector, standing to the left of him to boost your stats for this period of time in Abyssea, and the Atma Infusionist to his right, which can also boost your stats with the Atma that you have collected off of the mobs that you have already fought in Abyssea. Now, the options offered from both of these will increase as you complete more content inside of Abyssea. Now, once we finally defeat Kukulkan, we can now exit the zone and complete our Abyssea-Konschtat main quest. Now join us in our next episode when we will head back inside and attempt to challenge the main boss of the zone. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. We'll see you back here soon for our next episode.